I'm 33, and I used to think my family was just a little dysfunctional, not toxic. You know how some families argue about small things, like who's hosting Christmas or which movie to watch. Mine argues about money, control, and who's the responsible one. Spoiler, that's me. Or at least, that's what everyone says right before asking me for something. My name's Luke, and for most of my adult life, I've been the one holding everything together. The one who never said no because I thought family meant loyalty, even when it hurt. I was raised by parents who believed helping each other was sacred, but over time I realized that in their dictionary, helping meant Luke pays for it. I'm not exaggerating. For years, my brother, Ryan, has been the golden child, the one who has potential, even though he's 31 and hasn't held a job longer than 6 months. Meanwhile, I've worked my way up from sleeping in my car after college to managing a small but successful tech consultancy. My parents love reminding everyone how proud they are of my work ethic, right before they guilt me into wiring Ryan another few hundred for groceries or rent. At first, I didn't mind. Ryan was struggling, and Mom always said, "You're doing so well. It's just temporary." But temporary turned into years. I'd pay his bills, cover his car repairs, even help him with his credit card debt, just until he gets back on his feet. Except somehow, his feet never touched the ground. The real problem started 2 years ago when my dad added both my parents and Ryan to a family joint account. It was supposed to be for emergencies. Back then, I didn't think twice. I trusted them. I deposited a large chunk every month, figuring if anything happened, we'd be covered. It wasn't until much later that I realized that emergencies apparently included my mom's new kitchen backsplash and Ryan's trip to Vegas. I remember seeing a withdrawal for $3,800 labeled car maintenance. I asked what it was. Dad said, "Ryan's car broke down. Family emergency." Then I found a photo of Ryan at a pool party holding a champagne bottle. I confronted him once, quietly. I told him I wasn't mad, just disappointed. He shrugged and said, "Relax, man, you're loaded." That word, loaded, stuck in my head. It made me realize that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being a brother and turned into an ATM. Still, I didn't do anything drastic. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. Until this past December. The first text came on a Sunday afternoon. "Send me your card info, or don't bother coming to Christmas." It was from Ryan. No greeting, no explanation. Just that. I thought it was a joke at first. I even laughed. I replied, "Very funny." He sent a follow-up message. "Not joking. Mom said you'd help with gifts this year since I'm behind on rent. Just send it." I stared at my screen, speechless. He wasn't asking, he was demanding, like it was my duty. I called Mom, hoping to clear things up. "He's being ridiculous," I said. She sighed like I was overreacting. "Oh, Luke, don't make a big deal. You know he's had a hard year. He just needs a little help." "Then why did he threaten me?" I asked. "He didn't mean it like that. He's just stressed." "Mom," he said, "send your card info or don't bother coming." Silence. Then, "Well, if you're going to be difficult, maybe it's best you don't come this year." That sentence cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't just guilt, it was a threat. Family or compliance. Choose one. I decided to set a boundary for once. I texted Ryan back. "Then we're not coming." I felt a weird mix of relief and sadness. For the first time, I wasn't giving in. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Mom. "Don't be petty. I already sent $6,200 from your account to help him with rent." At first, I thought it was some kind of twisted joke. Then I opened my banking app. It wasn't a joke. The withdrawal was real, from the joint account I'd set up years ago. My stomach dropped. I checked the account history, and that's when I saw it. Not just one transfer, but dozens over the past few months. $300 here, $1,200 there. The kind of slow leak you only notice when the dam breaks. I sat there on the couch, shaking. I tried calling her. No answer. I called Dad. He picked up after a few rings, sounding half asleep. "Luke, what's wrong?" "You know exactly what's wrong," I said. "Mom took $6,000 from my account without permission." "It's a family account," he replied calmly. "Your mom was just trying to help your brother." "You're overreacting." "Overreacting? That's theft, Dad." He sighed. "Son, you make good money. Why are you acting like this is the end of the world?" Something inside me snapped. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the principle, the constant disrespect, the entitlement that had been eating away at me for years. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just said, I'm done, and hung up. All day, I couldn't focus on anything else. My mind kept replaying the years of just this once, and he's your brother. I thought about the times I paid their bills without complaint, the vacations I funded, the times I skipped out on things I wanted because I didn't want to cause tension. And this was how they thanked me, by stealing from me and calling me petty when I objected. That night, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and opened my laptop. I wasn't going to act out of anger, but I wasn't going to let it go either. I started by calling the bank, explaining the situation. They froze the joint account immediately and flagged the transfer as suspicious. Then they walked me through filing a fraud report. The irony wasn't lost on me when the form asked for the suspect's name. I typed Linda, my mother's last name. It felt surreal, like I was betraying them. Except, hadn't they already betrayed me? Once the report was filed, I sat there staring at the confirmation email. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. Years of resentment boiling into a single moment of clarity. But I didn't stop there. If they wanted to treat me like an outsider, I'd give them a reason to. I compiled screenshots of the transactions, texts, and emails into a neat little PDF. Then, with a calmness that surprised me, I sent it to every relative who ever told me to be nice to my family. The subject line read, "For transparency." I hit send and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. 83 missed calls, 27 voicemails. A text from Dad. "Your mother's in tears. Are you happy now?" I stared at the screen for a long time, my heart pounding. A small, sharp part of me wanted to reply with a simple yes. But I didn't. I just sat there, wondering how far this would go, and whether I'd finally crossed a line I couldn't come back from. And that's when something unexpected happened. When I say the next few days were chaos, I mean chaos. It started with the calls. I ignored the first dozen, but they just kept coming. Mom, Dad, Ryan, even my Aunt Claire, the one who always swore she stayed out of family drama. My voicemail was full of half-yelled messages that all blurred together. "You went too far, Luke. This is a private family matter. Do you realize what you've done to your mother?" The one that stuck out the most, though, came from Ryan. His tone wasn't even angry, it was smug. He said, "Guess you finally showed your true colors. Bro mom's crying her eyes out. Dad's furious, and you're sitting there acting like a victim. Congrats. You're the reason Christmas is ruined." Then he laughed. "You know, you've always thought you were better than everyone, but you're just as pathetic as the rest of us. You just hide it better." I replayed that message more times than I care to admit. Not because I believed it, but because it confirmed what I'd suspected for years. Ryan didn't see me as family. He saw me as leverage. By the end of the week, word had spread through the entire extended family. My cousin Aaron texted me a novel-length paragraph about how money shouldn't come between loved ones. My uncle tried to play mediator, suggesting I take a deep breath and reverse the freeze. My grandmother, the one person I actually respected, left me a quiet voicemail that just said, "I know you're hurting, Luke, but don't let anger make you like them." That one hit different. Because she was right, I was angry. But anger wasn't the only thing I felt. There was grief too. It felt like I'd finally buried something I didn't even know was dead. The illusion that my family loved me unconditionally. Mom didn't stop. Every day, she'd send guilt-laced messages. "I can't believe you'd humiliate me like this. You've destroyed our reputation. Your father can't even go to work without people asking questions." That last one made no sense. My dad works at an insurance office, not the White House. But logic was irrelevant now. This wasn't about reason. It was about control. Then she started using nostalgia as a weapon. She'd send old photos, me and Ryan as kids in matching pajamas, Christmas mornings with ribbons everywhere, me at 10 years old holding the ugly sweater she'd knitted. Her caption would read, "Remember when family meant something?" It stung. I'd scroll past them at night, thumb hovering over block, but I couldn't do it. Not yet. Part of me still hoped she'd realize what she'd done and apologize. But that part of me was about to die too. 3 days after the report was filed, my bank called. The fraud team wanted clarification. Apparently, someone had tried to reverse the freeze by calling in, pretending to be me. They had my full name, date of birth, and even the last 4 digits of my social security number. The rep said, "We flagged it immediately. The voice didn't match your ID on file." I didn't even need to ask who it was. I hung up and sat in silence for a long time. The sound of the refrigerator humming was the only thing keeping me grounded. Then, without thinking, I texted Mom. "Did you try to impersonate me to the bank?" No reply. 10 minutes later, Dad called. I picked up. "Luke," he started, his tone that familiar fake calm he used whenever he was hiding something. "Your mother didn't do anything wrong. She was just trying to sort things out." Sort things out. She tried to access my account after stealing from it. He sighed. "You're making this sound worse than it is. We were just trying to clean up the mess." "The mess you made." "Luke." "No, Dad. You don't get to do this anymore. You don't get to talk to me like I'm a stubborn child while you two cross every line imaginable." There was silence on his end. I could almost hear him grinding his teeth. Then he said, "You've always had a temper. I think it's best if you stay away until you've cooled down." "Trust me," I said, my voice shaking. "That won't be a problem." That night, I turned off my phone. But of course, that didn't stop them. The next morning, I woke up to messages from friends. Friends, not family. Screenshots of Facebook posts. My mom had made a long, public family update, painting herself as a devastated mother whose successful son had turned cruel and vindictive over money. The post read like a script for a bad soap opera. "We raised him with love. We sacrificed everything for him. And now he's punishing us for helping his brother stay afloat. I don't even recognize him anymore." The comments were a circus. Old family friends offering sympathy. Neighbors writing, "You were always such good parents." And Ryan, of course Ryan, chiming in with, "He's been bitter for years." Some people forget where they came from. That one pushed me over the edge. I spent hours pacing around my apartment. Every time I thought I'd calmed down, another notification would pop up. More comments. More pity for the poor mother. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that anyone who really knew me wouldn't believe it. But the truth? It did matter. Because reputation was the one thing I'd worked my whole life to protect. That night, I got an email from HR at my company. Someone had sent them an anonymous tip claiming I was under investigation for financial misconduct. My stomach dropped. I called my boss immediately. Thankfully, he knew me well enough to see through it. He said, "We'll handle it internally. Don't worry. But, Luke, maybe sort things out at home." That sentence, "sort things out at home," made me laugh. Because there was no home anymore. Just a family-sized graveyard of trust. When I checked my email again, I noticed something else, a PayPal alert. Someone had tried to send $500 using my old linked account. The name on the attempted transaction? Ryan, last name. The audacity was almost impressive. So I called him. I needed to hear his voice. He answered on the second ring. Well, the banker speaks. "Did you really try to use my PayPal?" He snorted. "It was a mistake. I thought it was mine." "You thought my account, under my name, was yours?" "Don't make it sound weird, dude. It auto-filled." "Ryan, that's fraud." "Oh, relax. You're such a drama queen. You always have to make yourself the victim." "Victim? You stole from me." He laughed again. That lazy, hollow sound I'd grown to hate. "You're acting like you're poor. You make more in a month than I've made all year. What's a few thousand to you?" I almost hung up right there, but I didn't. Instead, I asked something I'd never asked before. "Ryan, do you even feel bad about any of this?" He paused, not out of guilt, but out of confusion. "Feel bad? For what?" "For treating me like a wallet." "You're not a wallet," he said quickly. "You're family. Family share." That was it. That was the phrase that shattered whatever sympathy I had left. Family share. The same words my mother used when she justified taking from me. The same line they'd weaponized for years to keep me compliant. I ended the call without another word. For a while, I sat in the dark, trying to figure out what to do next. But before I could decide, there was a knock at my door. It was my neighbor, an older woman named Patricia. She looked concerned. "Luke, honey, are you okay? Your mom's been calling everyone on the street asking for your address. She said you're having a breakdown." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just family drama anymore. It was a smear campaign. I thanked her, closed the door, and leaned against it. My hands were trembling. My mother, the woman who used to tuck me in with bedtime stories, was now calling neighbors to paint me as unstable. For what? Because I finally stood up for myself? That night, I checked my email again. Another message from Mom. The subject line read, "Please talk to us before things get worse." I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it. Then, slowly, I clicked. It wasn't an apology. It was an ultimatum. If you don't lift the freeze and withdraw the report, we'll have no choice but to take legal action for defamation and emotional distress. Your father is already consulting an attorney. You're destroying this family, Luke. Please stop before you lose everyone." There it was, the line in the sand. Not an ounce of remorse, just manipulation wrapped in legal threats. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and stared out the window. Snow was falling softly against the city lights, coating everything in silence. Somewhere out there, families were laughing, decorating trees, sharing meals. Meanwhile, mine was burning, and I hadn't even begun to fight back yet. It had been 2 weeks since the fraud report, and I thought I'd finally reached the peak of my family's manipulation, but I was wrong. What came next didn't just sting, it shattered something fundamental inside me. I hadn't spoken to anyone since that last email. My phone stayed on silent, my blinds half drawn, my life reduced to muted routines. Work, home, sleep, repeat. I tried to convince myself that silence was peace, that cutting them off meant freedom. But deep down, I was waiting for them to realize what they'd done and reach out with something resembling remorse. An apology, a sign that maybe, just maybe, they understood the gravity of what they'd done. Instead, I got a summons. It arrived on a gray Thursday afternoon, in a plain envelope that looked like junk mail. Inside was a letter from a law firm, the same one my father used to handle his insurance disputes. The document inside accused me of financial misconduct, reputational harm, and emotional distress. It claimed I'd intentionally weaponized private financial data to humiliate family members, and that my actions constituted defamation and harassment. At the bottom, in the plaintiff section, were 2 names, Linda and Michael, last name. My parents. I sat at my desk, the letter trembling in my hands. For a few seconds, my brain refused to process it. It felt like a prank, something so absurd it couldn't possibly be real. But it was. The envelope had the firm's embossed logo. The language was formal. The date was current. They had actually done it. My parents were suing me. I don't even remember standing up, but I found myself pacing across my apartment, muttering, "No, no, no, no," like saying it enough times would reverse it. My first instinct was disbelief, then anger, then something darker, grief. It felt like losing them all over again, but this time there was paperwork to make it official. I called the number on the letter. The receptionist's voice was coldly professional. "Good afternoon, Hallow and Pierce Law Offices. This is Luke, last name," I said. My voice cracked. "I just received a summons from your office. I need to speak to whoever filed this." "One moment, sir." A click. Then another voice. Older, smooth, deliberate. "This is Attorney Pierce. How can I help?" "Yeah. Hi," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "You're representing my parents?" "Yes. Mr. and Mrs. last name." "They're my parents," I said. "Do you understand how insane this is? They stole from me." He paused. "Our clients allege that you filed a fraudulent report and disseminated private information with the intent to cause harm." I sent proof. Bank statements, text messages, everything. They took money that wasn't theirs. "I'm not here to argue the facts, Mr. last name. My advice is that you retain counsel before responding." And then he hung up. I just stood there, holding the phone to my ear long after the line went dead. It wasn't until my neighbor's dog barked that I snapped back to reality. By the next morning, I called a lawyer of my own. Her name was Dana. Sharp, direct, no nonsense. After I forwarded her everything, she called me back 20 minutes later. "Luke," she said, "you're not going to like this, but legally they can file this kind of claim. It won't hold up in court without evidence of defamation, but they're using it to scare you. It's leverage." Leverage for what? To make you drop the fraud report. And there it was again, that word, leverage. My family's favorite currency. She told me not to respond directly to them, not to engage, to let her handle the communication. I agreed, but something inside me felt off. I wasn't afraid of court. I was afraid of what this said about who they'd become. Or maybe who they'd always been. 2 days later, I got another message, this time from my cousin Aaron. It read, "Luke, I need to tell you something before it gets worse. Your mom's been going around telling everyone you forged her signature on the joint account. She's showing screenshots of some email proof." My blood ran cold. Forged her signature? I hadn't even touched her account. She was the one who used mine. I told Aaron to send me whatever she had. 10 minutes later, My phone pinged with screenshots. My mother had taken an old email I'd written, one where I mentioned transferring funds between accounts years ago, and edited it. She'd changed dates, amounts, and even inserted fake lines that made it look like I'd been manipulating their finances. Then she'd shared it with the rest of the family, along with a story about how I'd been doing shady things behind everyone's back for years. I stared at the screen in disbelief. My own mother had fabricated evidence to make me look like a criminal. I called her, I don't even know why. Maybe part of me still wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding. She answered on the second ring. Luke. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. I was hoping you'd call. What did you tell people? Excuse me. Don't play dumb, Mom. You sent out fake emails saying I forged your signature. Do you realize that's a crime? I didn't fake anything. I just showed people what you've been doing. You moved money around without permission. Without permission? It's my money. Her tone hardened instantly. You always think everything belongs to you. You've never understood family. I laughed bitterly. No, I understand perfectly. Family means I work, you spend, and Ryan coasts. Don't you dare talk about your brother like that, she snapped. He's been through more than you'll ever understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. He's been through everyone's wallets. There was silence. Then, quietly, she said, You've always been jealous of him. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Jealous? I repeated. Of what, Mom? His debt? His laziness? His constant freeloading? His heart, she said softly. He actually cares about people. You only care about money. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not a clean snap, but a slow, splintering crack that reached somewhere deep. All the years I'd spent trying to earn their respect, to be the good son, to help, it all turned to ash in that one sentence. I said nothing, just hung up. The next day, my boss called me into his office. He looked uncomfortable. Luke, he began, I got an anonymous package today. It had bank documents and a letter accusing you of embezzlement. I know it's nonsense, but I need you to understand how serious this looks. I froze. Wait, what? He slid the envelope across the desk. Inside were photocopies of the same doctored emails my mother had been circulating. Alongside them was a handwritten note. You should know the kind of man you're employing. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced through every possibility, every way this could have happened. But I already knew who sent it. My parents, or maybe Ryan, had taken this fight to my workplace. I left the office early that day, barely holding it together. On the drive home, I kept replaying old memories, family dinners, birthdays, my mom's laugh, my dad's advice, Ryan's stupid jokes. It felt like all of it had been rewritten, tainted. When I pulled into my apartment complex, there was a car already parked out front, my parents' old beige sedan. My heart dropped. They were sitting inside. My mom in the passenger seat, eyes red. My dad behind the wheel, jaw clenched. I didn't even get out of my car at first. I just sat there, watching them through the windshield. My mom gestured for me to roll down my window. I didn't. She got out and walked over anyway. Luke, please, she said, voice trembling. We need to talk. I opened the door, but didn't step out. About what? The lawsuit? The fake emails? The lies you're spreading? Tears welled in her eyes. We didn't mean for it to go this far. Then why did you sue me? She hesitated. Because you wouldn't listen. Listen to what? To reason. To family. You made us look like monsters. I stared at her. You are monsters. Her face crumpled. My dad got out of the car then, his voice firm. Enough. You've done enough damage, Luke. You're going to drop this report, and we'll make the lawsuit disappear. It's that simple. Or what? I asked quietly. He stepped closer. Or we'll make sure everyone believes our version. You might have money, but we have connections. Family. You'll be alone. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I looked at them, two people I barely recognized anymore, and felt something I hadn't before, pity, because they didn't even realize how far they'd fallen. Then my mom said something that froze me completely. We didn't want to, but Ryan's going to testify that you forged everything. He's already written a statement. For a second, I thought I misheard her. He's what? He saw you using my laptop last year. He remembers you typing something about transfers. He's agreed to tell the truth. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd that laughter was the only thing left to do. You mean he's lying for you? My mom looked away. My dad didn't flinch. He's doing what family does, he said. That was it. The final betrayal. I shut my car door, rolled up the window, and drove off, leaving them standing there in the cold, looking small and distant in my rearview mirror. That night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by silence. The city outside was alive, traffic, sirens, laughter echoing from nearby bars. But inside, it was just me, the hum of the fridge, and a realization I couldn't unsee. My family wasn't just broken. They were willing to destroy me to protect the lie they'd built. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I wanted to forgive them or make them regret ever underestimating me. Either way, the next move would be mine. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, my mom's trembling lip, my dad's cold stare, Ryan's smug little grin in my imagination, rehearsing the lies he'd tell under oath. It's funny, the kind of clarity that comes when your world collapses. You'd think I'd be angry, or pacing, or breaking things. But I wasn't. I just sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, staring at the wall. It wasn't shock anymore, it was understanding. A brutal, hollow kind of understanding. I'd spent 33 years trying to be the good son, the one who helped, who stayed reasonable, who forgave. And where did that get me? Sued, betrayed, lied about. I'd become the villain in a story I didn't even write. The next few days blurred into one long, gray smear. I went to work, but I wasn't really there. I'd stare at my monitor, reread the same line of code 10 times, and forget what I was even doing. My coworkers noticed. One of them, Priya, pulled me aside. "Hey, Luke, are you okay? You've been off." I wanted to tell her everything. But where do you even start? My family's suing me because I refused to fund my brother's rent. It sounded ridiculous even in my head. So I just said, "I'm dealing with something personal." She nodded, gently. "Take care of yourself, okay? Whatever it is." That night, I came home to a letter slipped under my door. No envelope, no return address, just a folded sheet of paper. I opened it and immediately recognized the handwriting. My mother's. "Luke, please don't let this go further. You're hurting yourself more than you're hurting us. We raised you better than this. All we wanted was to make things right for your brother. He's been through so much. You've always had everything. You could have just helped. Please, drop the case. Let's fix this as a family." There was a postscript. "Your father says you'll regret this if you let it reach court." I folded the letter, put it in the drawer, and poured myself a drink. For a few weeks, that became the routine. Work, silence. Legal updates from Dana. More silence. Every call or email from my family went unanswered. Every message went straight to archive. But their absence didn't bring peace. It brought something worse. Emptiness. Then came the headlines. It started small, a local gossip Facebook page run by some old woman in my parents' neighborhood. She posted, "Sad to see a family torn apart by greed. A certain tech consultant has turned on his own parents for money. Truly heartbreaking." It got shared hundreds of times. Then a small online outlet picked it up, one of those local digital tabloids that survives on rumor. They didn't use my name, but the details were obvious. Successful young entrepreneur files fraud case against his elderly parents. I remember sitting at my desk reading it, my hands cold, my stomach twisting. I called Dana immediately. "Can we do something about this?" She sighed. "Not really. Not unless we can prove they gave the story directly. It's speculation, not defamation. So they get to destroy my reputation, and I just watch." Sometimes silence is the best response, Luke. Let them talk. Truth has a way of surfacing. I wanted to believe that. But when clients started hesitating to renew contracts, when an investor paused a deal until things cleared up, I realized silence doesn't stop damage. It just makes it quieter. Still, I didn't retaliate. Not yet. I think part of me was too tired to fight. I was living off caffeine and spite, but even that has limits. There were days I didn't speak to anyone at all. My apartment felt smaller every night. The noise in my head was so constant I started taking long midnight walks through the city just to drown it out. The sound of passing cars and faraway sirens became my therapy. Then one night, as I was walking past a diner near my block, I saw something that stopped me cold. Through the window, sitting in a booth with his phone out, was Ryan. I froze. He hadn't seen me yet. He was laughing at something on his screen, fork in one hand, milkshake in the other. There was a woman sitting across from him, smiling, someone I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me. I stepped closer, careful not to catch his attention. The woman said something, and Ryan leaned back, grinning. My brother? Oh, he's fine. He's just having a little meltdown. It'll blow over once he realizes mom and dad aren't backing down. The woman frowned. You think he'll really drop it? Ryan smirked. Please. He always folds. He's soft. Always has been. Worst case scenario, mom settles it out of court and I get my rent covered again. I don't know what I felt first, rage, disbelief, or heartbreak. Maybe all three at once. But I remember walking away before he could see me. I didn't trust myself to stay calm. That was the night I decided something had to change. I stopped waiting for justice to arrive on its own. If my family wanted to play dirty, I could get my hands dirty too. Except I'd do it cleanly. Strategically. Quietly. It started with the bank. I called and asked for every statement, every record tied to the joint accounts, not just recent ones. The manager hesitated until I mentioned the fraud report on file. Within a few days, I had boxes of documents delivered to my door. I spent nights going through them line by line, highlighting every withdrawal, every suspicious transfer, every expense labeled family fund. What I found was worse than I expected. They hadn't just taken from me. They'd been moving money between accounts under my name for years. Tiny amounts at a time, just enough to fly under radar. It was systematic, deliberate. I didn't tell Dana yet. I needed more. So I dug deeper. I checked tax filings, property records, even PayPal receipts. That's when I discovered that my parents' mortgage payments for their vacation home were being drafted from an account partially under my SSN. They'd literally tied me to their debt. I don't remember the last time I felt that specific kind of nausea. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was identity theft. A whole new level of violation. But instead of rage, what came next was something calm. Cold. I started making a folder, an archive, really. Every document, every message, every edited proof my mom had circulated. I timestamped everything, labeled it, cross-referenced it with dates. It became an obsession, but it was the first time in months that I felt focused. I realized something important in that process. My family thrived on chaos. They wanted me reactive, emotional, explosive, because as long as I was angry, I wasn't strategic. So I stopped giving them reactions. When my dad called again, his number flashing across the screen while I was in the middle of cataloging withdrawals, I didn't even flinch. I just silenced it. When mom sent another guilt-soaked email about restoring peace, I archived it without opening. When Ryan texted, "Hey, heard you're in deep. Should have just played along, man," I blocked him. It was almost peaceful, that silence. I started sleeping again, eating again, working again. Slowly, pieces of my life began to reassemble. Not perfectly, but enough. A few weeks later, Dana called with an update. Their lawyer reached out, she said. They want to meet. Mediation. I hesitated. Why? Maybe they're realizing this isn't going their way. What happens if I say no? Then we go to court. I took a breath. Set it up. That night, I reopened the drawer with my mother's letter, the one where she said I'd regret this. I read it one more time, quietly, then placed it in my evidence folder. Because regret wasn't what I felt anymore. What I felt was readiness. And maybe, just maybe, the faint spark of something I hadn't felt since this whole nightmare started. Power. But I didn't show it. Not yet. Let them think I was broken. Let them think I'd surrendered. Because the truth was, I'd just started building the kind of case that would not only expose them, but make sure they could never do it to anyone again. The mediation was scheduled for a Thursday morning in February. The kind of day that feels like it's holding its breath. Gray skies, air thick with fog, and a silence that made every car engine sound louder than it should. I sat in the waiting area of the law office, dressed in a dark suit I hadn't worn since my cousin's wedding, hands folded on my lap, pretending I was calm. Inside, I wasn't. I'd spent the last month quietly preparing, gathering everything. Every record, every statement, every edited email, every PayPal log. I'd even found a digital forensics expert who confirmed that the proof my mother sent around had been tampered with. Metadata doesn't lie. It showed edits, timestamps, even her device name. I had enough evidence to make them look like the villains they were, but that wasn't what I was after anymore. I didn't want just to win. I wanted understanding, or at least to see the look on their faces when they realized how far they'd pushed me. When the conference room door opened, Dana gave me a small nod. "They're here," she whispered. I followed her in. Mom was sitting across the long oak table, clutching a tissue like a prop. Dad sat beside her, arms crossed, jaw set. Ryan leaned casually in his chair, wearing a smug half-grin that made me want to walk out before it even started. Their lawyer, a gray-haired man named Pierce, greeted me with professional politeness, the kind that doesn't mean a thing. We took our seats. Dana placed a neat binder in front of me. My mother avoided eye contact. Pierce started first, his tone rehearsed. We're here today in good faith, hoping to reach an amicable resolution before things escalate further. My clients wish to express their regret over how personal this has become. Regret. That word made me laugh under my breath. He continued. They maintain that their intentions were never malicious, merely misunderstood. They'd like to propose a mutual withdrawal of claims to preserve family relationships. In plain English, drop your fraud report. We'll drop the lawsuit. Dana looked at me, silently asking if I wanted to speak. I nodded. Mr. Pierce, I began, keeping my voice steady. Before we discuss anything, I'd like to clarify what exactly your clients are denying. Because as I understand it, they stole from me, forged documents, and then tried to destroy my reputation. Correct? Pierce hesitated. My clients disagree with your characterization of events. I opened my folder. That's fine. I brought something that might help jog everyone's memory. I slid a printed report across the table. It was from the forensic analyst. Highlighted in yellow, document modified on January 4th, 10:42 p.m., from device registered to Linda Dash, last name. iMac. Mom's eyes flicked to it. Then to me. Luke, where did you? From your own computer, apparently. She looked to Dad, panicked. He said nothing. Pierce adjusted his glasses. We can review that privately after. Oh, there's more, I said calmly. I handed him another set of pages, bank statements this time. That's every withdrawal from our joint account since 2019. Notice the pattern? Always in round numbers. Always right before vacations, home renovations, and birthday parties that somehow involved you two surprising Ryan with new gifts. Ryan scoffed. You're seriously tracking every dollar? That's pathetic, man. I turned to him slowly. You tried to use my PayPal to send yourself $500. Want me to show the screenshot? His smirk faltered. Dana stepped in then, her voice measured but firm. We're prepared to take this to court, Mr. Pierce. Our client has documented evidence of fraud, forgery, and defamation. If this continues, we'll also pursue criminal charges. The room fell silent. My mother started crying softly, dabbing at her eyes. We never meant for it to get this far, she whispered. You've always been so cold, Luke. So distant. We were just trying to help your brother. By stealing from me? I interrupted. By lying to my boss. By spreading rumors online? That's your definition of help. She looked up, mascara streaking. You don't understand what it's like being a parent. You help your children however you can. Even if one of them ruins the other? No one answered. The mediator, a quiet woman who'd been scribbling notes this whole time, finally spoke. It seems emotions are running high. Perhaps we can take a short recess? I didn't need a recess. I was done talking. I stood, gathered my folder, and looked directly at my parents. You said I'd regret this if I let it reach court. You were right. I regret it took me this long to stop pretending we were still a family. Then I walked out. Dana followed me into the hallway. That was intense, she said softly. You okay? Not really. But I will be. And that was the truth. Because walking out of that building, something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't their victim anymore. I wasn't their safety net, or their scapegoat, or their silent provider. I was finally free, and with freedom came something dangerous, clarity. That night, I went home and did something I should have done years ago. I logged into every financial account I owned. Every business tie, investment, retirement fund. I stripped their names from everything. Closed every joint account. Changed every password. Filed new tax separation forms. Then I called the bank again and added a fraud alert with biometric verification. No phone approvals, no paper signatures. If anyone wanted access, they'd need my face. It felt cleansing. But I wasn't done. Over the next week, I contacted a few friends in the tech industry, people I'd helped over the years, clients who'd become allies. I told them what had happened, carefully, factually. One of them, a cybersecurity consultant, offered something interesting. You know, Luke, he said, if you wanted to, you could trace where some of those stolen funds went. Even beyond what the bank shows. Transfers leave fingerprints. Digital ones? I asked. He smiled. Exactly. Within a few days, I had a detailed log of every transaction that originated from those accounts, even the ones that had been hidden behind shell transfers and gift cards. And one of those led to something I never expected, a payment toward a small business LLC under Ryan's name. Apparently, he'd been running a music studio with friends, funded almost entirely by the money my parents siphoned off. That was my turning point. I didn't tell anyone, not even Dana. Instead, I started documenting again, not as a victim this time, but as someone preparing for the final act. While they thought I was backing off, I was collecting every nail for the coffin. I contacted the bank again and requested a full audit report, including every transfer flagged for suspicious activity. I called the credit bureau to verify all linked accounts under my Social Security. I even hired a private investigator, not to follow them, but to verify the assets they claimed in their legal filing. The results were illuminating. Ryan's studio? It didn't exist. The LLC was fake, a shell registered under a virtual address. My parents' financial hardship. A lie. They'd purchased a new vehicle 3 months earlier. And that mortgage debt they cried about? Paid in full. With my money. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not out of happiness, but from something colder. Satisfaction. They thought they'd buried me under manipulation, but all they'd really done was hand me the blueprint to dismantle them. A week later, Dana called. Their lawyer reached out again. They're suddenly interested in settling privately. Of course they are, I said. Tell them we'll think about it. But I had no intention of settling, because I'd just learned something useful, something powerful. When people build their entire lives on lies, you don't need to fight them head on. You just need to pull one thread. The rest unravels on its own. So I kept quiet. I waited. I watched. I didn't know exactly when or how I'd strike back, but I knew I wouldn't rush it this time. Because the best revenge doesn't come from anger. It comes from patience, precision, and the truth. And when it was all ready, when every document, every receipt, every false statement lined up in perfect order, I'd make sure everyone saw exactly who my family really was. Until then, I'd let them enjoy their illusion of control. They had no idea what was coming. The mediation was the first act of the finale. The courtroom was the encore. I didn't expect fireworks. I expected the slow, clinical unspooling of the paper trail. But there was something satisfyingly theatrical about watching the whole thing happen in public, with everyone who mattered sitting in rows and pretending not to stare. Dana had warned me this would be messy. Civil cases take time. Don't expect a headline verdict tomorrow, she said. I answered her with the binder I'd built. Forensic reports, bank audits, the audit trail that showed money funneling from accounts tied to me into places it shouldn't have gone, the edited emails stamped with my mother's device ID, the PayPal attempts, the mortgage payments, the LLC that existed on paper and not in reality. We also had the PI report proving Ryan's shell company was a fake, registered with a mail forwarding service and run off a friend's couch. When the forensic analyst took the stand, he spoke human. He explained metadata like a teacher explaining a math trick to a class. Timestamps don't lie, device IDs stick, edits leave fingerprints. He showed the flowchart of transfers and the annotated email showing the alterations. It was dry, precise evidence, the opposite of the emotional shouting my parents had been using as a shield. My parents had their moment. They had peers pacing the perimeter, leaning on theatrics about a son pushed too far, memory lapses, the pain of broken trust. Dad's voice cracked in one testimony. Mom's hands shook. Ryan testified, too, reading a statement he swore was the truth, claiming he remembered seeing things that corroborated his parents' story. He spoke like someone reciting a line. But then Dana put the bank manager on the stand and asked about the call that tried to reverse the freeze. The manager described the voice mismatch, the IP traces that originated from a local library where a library card tied to Mom's name had been used to log into an account the night the edits were made. Pierce's eyes slid toward Mom and Ryan like they'd been caught with a hand in the cookie jar. The judge doesn't enjoy spectacle, but he does love clarity. The pattern was clear: repeated, unauthorized transfers, documents altered and circulated to create a narrative, attempts to weaponize reputation to intimidate. Court filings don't make for viral videos, but they make for decisive rulings. The judge found in my favor on the central claims. Unauthorized transfers were to be reversed where possible. A monetary judgment was issued for restitution plus damages, and he referred the matter to the prosecutor's office to look into potential criminal forgery and fraud. That last line in the judge's order felt like a tolling bell. The fallout was immediate in a way I hadn't fully anticipated. Within days, the bank reversed several of the suspicious withdrawals, and a hold was placed on other accounts tied to the transfers. My HR call became an apology email. "We regret the disruption." A client who'd been sitting on a renewal signed back on after a conference call that cleared my name. The local gossip page that had replayed my mother's version quietly took down the post and issued a correction after the paper trail was published. The editor emailed an apology. Social circles shifted. People who'd taken my parents' side suddenly went quiet when shown the evidence. Details travel fast when there's paperwork to back them up. My parents reacted like anyone cornered by their choices. First denial, then bargaining, then shame. There was the expected cycle of messages, contrite emails, offers to repay, pleas for family counseling, but also new things. Neighbors avoiding them, the retirement group at Dad's office whispering, invitations drying up. My mom's friends stopped answering calls. The woman who'd run the neighborhood gossip feed sent a short, embarrassed note. "I didn't know the whole story." "I'm sorry." Ryan reacted worse. He'd been banking, literally and figuratively, on the idea that I couldn't or wouldn't fight back. Once the transfers were traced and his LLC dissolved under investigation, the people who'd given him small favors stopped answering. His studio partners distanced themselves when checks bounced, and the virtual mailbox returned mail marked inactive. He called me once during all of this. A short, choking thing where he tried to explain, to apologize, to beg. I let it go to voicemail. He left another message of someone trying on remorse, but I'd heard that voice before on the mediation tape and in the emails he'd sent his friends. It sounded rehearsed. The criminal referral meant I had to relive a lot of the details with detectives, interviews, signed statements, a forensics team reviewing the same files Dana's people had. That part was oddly cleansing. You tell the truth again and again, and each telling takes the sting out of the story. The investigators were professional and quiet. They didn't want drama, just facts. When the prosecutor called to say they were opening a formal inquiry into the possibility of forgery, it landed on me like someone switching on the lights. Not vindictive, corrective. There were losses, too. Some relationships that had always been conditional on me, keeping the peace, evaporated almost immediately. A few relatives, people who demanded I be the family ATM, sent terse messages asserting they were disappointed. A handful of mutual friends took sides. It stung, but it also made the margins clear. People who'd always been there because of what I could provide thinned out. And then there was the quiet resolution. The judge's restitution paid back a good portion of what was taken. The bank cleared my reputation internally. My boss publicly cleared me in a company meeting. Better yet, he offered support for any fallout. The investor who had paused returned the next quarter with stronger terms after seeing the judgment and the audits. It wasn't a fairy tale where everything bounced back overnight, but stability returned on its own schedule. The hardest part was family. They were not dead to me in the melodramatic sense I'd once imagined. They were smaller. Phone calls stopped meaning the same thing. I stopped expecting apologies that would never fully repair things. We reached a practical separation. Contact would be limited, communication channeled through counsel when necessary, and personal boundaries enforced with the same rigor I used for my business. I didn't gloat. I didn't dance on their reputation. I simply stepped away. On the first quiet holiday after the judgment, instead of the forced dinner with strained smiles and hollow gifts, I went to a small restaurant with a few friends who had been steady through all of it. We ordered too much food, laughed about stupid office politics, and drank coffee that wasn't accompanied by familial tension. It was ordinary and small and perfect. That night, after I returned home and cleared the table, my phone buzzed. One new message, a short text from Dad. No excuses, no pleading, just 2 words. "We're sorry." I read it twice, then set the phone down. I thought of the long months of catalogs and emails, of tracking transfers and building binders, of sleeping and not sleeping, of walking past the diner where Ryan once laughed with his phone. I thought of the weight that had finally been lifted because I'd chosen to stop carrying it. I put my hands on the window and watched the snow come down in the streetlight, slow flakes turning the world soft and quiet. For 33 years, my family had taught me how to give until it hurt. That night, I finally learned how to take care of myself. I didn't answer the phone when it rang again. I didn't need to. I felt, for the first time in a long time, entirely present in my own life.